So, yes, the big story today, McGill, Concordia on their own, but together, deciding to sue the Quebec government over the tuition hike situation. I had a chance to speak to Graham Carr. He is the president of Concordia just a little while ago, and began by asking, first of all, why now? Why do you think this was the time to take this action? Here's what he said.
Maybe I can explain the timing first of all. So obviously in the fall, the government came out with their initial policy announcements and, backtracked sideways, this, that, and the other thing, and came out with a final policy announcement in December. But that policy announcement only became official when the government deposited what are known as the règles budgétaires in January. And so it was at that point that the policy was official, and it was that point that the clock started ticking in terms of considering legal action. So just that explains the timing. Why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this, Aaron, because we believe that once again on this dossier, the government failed to do its homework, if I can use a kind of academic point of reference. And it failed to do its homework legally because under the Charter, our reading, our interpretation is that the government has an obligation with respect to minority educational institutions, such as Concordia, in this case in Quebec, has an obligation to take into account our values and to weigh those values in its determination of any new policy, and to ensure that that new policy does as little harm as possible to the minority institutions. And in our view, the government failed to take into account our values of diversity, values of accessibility, for example, and instead of making policy decisions that did as little harm as possible to Concordia, actually engaged in policy decisions that appeared to be designed to inflict harm on us. So that's the legalistic reason why we are taking this course of action. I have to say, I'm really sad that it's come to this point. This is not something that we or our board have taken lightly. But as I'm sure you can understand, Aaron, we feel very strongly, and I certainly feel very strongly, that we need to defend the institution. We need to defend the values of the institution, and that's why we have gone ahead with the legal action.
Let me ask a couple of other questions. I understand that each university is launching a suit on its own. So it's McGill launching its and Concordia launching its. Why not together?
Well, because the two institutions, because between the two institutions, we believe that there are a number of valid arguments that can be made to justify legal action against the government. And so McGill has selected one avenue of pursuit. Okay. We have selected another. However, the reality is that McGill can join Concordia's suit down the road. We can join McGill's suit. Third parties can also join either suits. So this is a point of departure.
With respect to now that this is official, what happens next? Are you asking for a stay? I mean, what happens until you get a judgment?
So we're not asking for a stay. We believe that we have solid grounds to proceed, solid administrative grounds to proceed with the case that we have laid out, and that if we are successful in that pursuit, because ours is very focused on the règles budgétaires, on the tuition. On the changes to tuition for the rest of Canada and the change in the funding formula for international students. And we're very focused on those two issues, and we believe if we are successful that by definition those measures would be rescinded.
Now, I thought I'd heard earlier today there's an issue of, in this particular case, I don't know if it's yours or McGill's, on the restriction of interprovincial trade. Is that part of your contention here?
That's not part of our contention. Okay. No, we're as I said, we're very focused on the due diligence issue from the perspective of the government.
It's interesting this is happening now. I'm sure you saw the story, I think it might have been today, if not yesterday, where we're seeing other Canadian universities already saying that they're seeing increases in enrollments and applications there. I'm guessing that's as a direct result of this decision or not?
Yes, we've heard that as well from colleagues elsewhere in the country. I have to say, Aaron, going back to October when the government first came forward with this announcement, I had colleagues in the rest of the Canada who were not gleefully rubbing their hands, but who knew that this was essentially a marketing coup for them. And as I certainly said very early on in the process, the big winner of the government's policies was going to be Toronto, not Montreal, because it would draw students elsewhere, unfortunately. And if, as we see from the data points at universities like Queen's and Western, they are noticing an uptick in applications from the rest of Canada, and the experience for the three Anglophone universities is a decline in students from the rest of Canada. But it's also a decline in our case from international high school students applying to come to Concordia. We're seeing a 12% decline compared with last year. We've never experienced anything like that either. So the combination of the decline in applications from the rest of Canada, the decline of applications from international undergraduate students, I think it can only be attributed to one thing. It's the only factor that's changed since last year, and that's the government policy.
And I think when you quantify just from out of province, I think that number was 30%, right? That you've seen a reduction in applications?
Yeah, it's down at 27% now. So, but it hasn't really, 27% again is a staggeringly high amount.
And with respect to funding, right? Because part of this tuition hike situation is the changing of funding, which will include more money for French universities. Are you contesting that as well? Is that one of the issues?
What we're contesting is the decision with respect to international students that the government will claw back $17,000 of tuition funding that they pay, provide us with a partial compensatory grant, but it leaves a gap of between $5,000 and $6,000. In other words, Aaron, I think the simplest way I could say it is that if we recruited exactly the same number of international undergraduate students in 2024 that we had in 2023, we would be losing between $5,000 and $6,000 on each of those students.
Okay.
So that's a significant hit to our revenue stream, and I think that's part of what this policy is about. Is not, as I said, doing the least damage. The policy is clearly about forcing us to change our recruitment patterns, reducing the number of students who come to Concordia and McGill, shrinking the size of our institutions, and creating limits on the revenue that we generate, which inevitably has impacts on our financial situation.
Last thing I will ask you, and maybe this doesn't make or is not included, or it doesn't necessarily factor in. Remember, so part of this is, of course, the fact that the government wants to see students who do come here from out of province be forced to reach a certain French proficiency level. Yes. Is that in here as well at any point, or not at all?
No. So I mean, that's in there in the sense that those measures, the Francisization measures, were only due to come into effect in 2025. So the focus of our legal action is on the règle budgétaire published in 2024.
Okay.
That said, we are, and we have said very clearly that we're concerned about not only the target that the government has set of 80%, but also the punitive measures that they have associated with that policy should the universities fail to reach the 80%. Our point, I'm speaking for Concordia here, Aaron, is that we're very committed to supporting our students to learn French. Remember, we went to the government with that proposal. They didn't come to us. That came from the Anglophone universities, and it came from our universities because we believe that we have a responsibility to contribute to the protection and promotion of the French language in Quebec. But moreover, I think for Concordia in particular, there's a way to attract students to come to our programs, to support them in learning French or perfecting their French, because many of them will have come through immersion programs, and it allows them, hopefully, to make the choice to stay here after they graduate, to contribute to the economy, to integrate into Quebec society and culture. But our approach is to support students in learning French in a positive way, not making it punitive seeming.
All right. Gray, we're going to leave it there. I thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate it as well.
All right, Graham Carr, president of Concordia University, on their decision, along with McGill, to sue the provincial government over the imposition of those tuition hikes and accompanying factors involved in those as well. So again, worth noting, the two suits are not exactly the same. This part about the idea of these tuition hikes somehow contravening interprovincial laws, I believe that's in the McGill suit. It's not in the Concordia suit. It's a very interesting approach taken here by both universities to sue individually and not collectively. As to what happens next, we'll wait and see. I can tell you when asked for comment today from the Quebec government, the answer was, thank you. We're aware of the situation. We have no comment at this time. I think that's basically what I'm translating from the French, right? So there you go.